The Battle of Adwa, how Ethiopia defeated Italy. At the dawn of the 20th century, nearly all of Africa was under European control, yet one nation stood defiantly independent: Ethiopia. This is the story of how Emperor Menelik II and his people resisted the colonial ambitions of the Kingdom of Italy and secured one of the most significant victories in African history. The late 19th century saw European powers racing to colonize Africa, a process formalized during the Berlin Conference of 1884-1885. By 1889, Italy had seized control of Eritrea and sought to expand its territory by making Ethiopia a protectorate. In the year 1889, Italy signed the Treaty of Wuchale with King Menelik II of Shewa, following its occupation of Eritrea. The treaty recognized Italy's claim over the coastal colony and included promises of financial aid and military supplies to Ethiopia. However, a major dispute arose over the interpretation of Article 17. The Italian language version stated that Ethiopia's emperor was required to conduct all foreign relations through Italy, effectively making Ethiopia an Italian protectorate. Conversely, the Amharic version allowed the emperor to seek Italy's assistance in foreign affairs only if he chose to do so. Italian diplomats later claimed the Amharic version included this clause, and that Menelik II knowingly signed a modified copy. Tensions escalated as Italy sought to enforce its interpretation of the treaty through military means, leading to what is now known as the Battle of Adwa, also called the First Italo-Ethiopian War. In December 1894, Bata Hagos led a rebellion in Akele Guzai, then under Italian control in Eritrea. The uprising was crushed by Italian forces under Major Pietro Torselli, and Bata was killed. In January 1895, Italian General Oreste Baratieri defeated Ras Mengesha Johannes at the Battle of Coatit, pushing Mengesha further south. By late 1895, Italian troops had advanced deep into Ethiopia and occupied much of Tigray. On December 7, 1895, Ethiopian forces led by Ras Makonnen Volde Mikael, Fitarari Gebeyehu, and Ras Mengesha Johannes annihilated a small Italian unit at the Battle of Amba Alagi. The Italians retreated to defensible positions in Tigray, where both armies prepared for a decisive confrontation. By February 1896, both sides were struggling with dwindling supplies. General Baratieri, aware that Menelik's forces relied on local resources, believed the Ethiopian army would disperse once supplies ran out. However, under pressure from the Italian government, Baratieri was compelled to act. On the evening of February 29, 1896, Baratieri met with his generals, Matteo Albertone, Giuseppe Arrimondi, Vittorio da Bormida, and Giuseppe Elena, to discuss their next move. With provisions nearly depleted, Baratieri suggested retreating, possibly as far as Asmara. His subordinates strongly opposed the idea, arguing that retreat would demoralize their troops. General da Bormida insisted that losing a few thousand soldiers was preferable to a dishonorable retreat. Reluctantly, Baratieri decided to launch an attack the following morning at 9 a.m. Italian troops began moving to their positions shortly after midnight. The Ethiopian forces under Emperor Menelik II are estimated to have numbered between 73,000 and over 100,000, outnumbering the Italian army by approximately 5-1. The Ethiopian army was divided among key leaders, including Emperor Menelik, Empress Taytu Betul, and a few others. On the other hand, prior to the Battle of Adwa, the Italian army consisted of 29,700 Italians and 14,000 Eritrean askaris. However, many soldiers were assigned to support roles and guarding supply lines, leaving an estimated 14,519 effective combat troops, according to Harold Marcus. Another estimate by David L. Lewis places the Italian forces at 17,770 combat troops, supported by 56 artillery pieces. On the night of February 29th and the early morning of March 1st, 1896, 3 Italian brigades advanced separately toward Adwa along narrow mountain paths, while a 4th brigade remained in camp. Historian David Levering Lewis explains that the Italian battle plan involved 3 columns marching in parallel to the crests of 3 mountains. Dabomida commanding the right, Albertone the left, and Arimondi the center, with a reserve led by Elena following Arimondi. The plan relied on crossfire between the columns, which was expected to make their troops as deadly as razored shears. Albertone's brigade was tasked with setting the pace and taking the summit of Kidanmere to secure the high ground for the Italians. However, the brigades became separated during the night and were spread across several miles of challenging terrain. By dawn, misled by poor maps, Albertone mistakenly identified another mountain as Kidanmeret. When corrected, he advanced directly into Ethiopian positions. Unknown to General Baratieri, Emperor Menelik II had been preparing to move the camp to a new location on March the 2nd due to strained local resources. Early on March 1st, as Menelik prayed for divine guidance, scouts from Ras Alula alerted him to the Italian advance. Menelik quickly summoned the armies of his nobles and, with Empress Taytu Betul by his side, ordered his forces forward. The Ethiopian army formed a defensive line overlooking the Adwa Valley. Negus Tekle Haymanot commanded the right wing with his Gojam troops. Ras Mengesha led the left wing with Tigray forces. Ras Makonnen commanded the center, and Ras Mikael led the Wollo Oromo cavalry on the northern flank. Menelik and Taytu stayed in reserve, with troops led by Ras Olie and Wagshum Gwangul. At 6 o'clock a.m., Albertone's Askari brigade encountered Ethiopian forces near Kidanmeret. The first to engage were the Tigray troops under Ras Mengesha and Ras Alula, quickly joined by forces from Negus Tekle Haymanot, Ras Makonnen and Ras Mikael. Troops under Wagshum Gwangul and Ras Olie arrived soon after, concentrating much of the Ethiopian army against Albertone's isolated brigade. Although Italian artillery inflicted significant casualties, Ethiopian forces under Baltasafo deployed Hotchkiss quick-firing guns, neutralizing the Italian advantage. Heavily outnumbered, Albertone's brigade resisted for 2 hours before surrendering. The survivors retreated toward Arimondi's brigade. Arimondi's forces held off Ethiopian attacks for 3 hours, but their strength waned. Menelik then released his reserve of 25,000 Shuans, overwhelming the Italian defenders. Arimondi's brigade broke and fled, with remaining officers and soldiers quickly overrun. 2 companies of Bersaglieri arrived, but were also cut down. General Baratieri, recognizing defeat, ordered a general retreat. By noon, the Italian center had collapsed entirely. Ethiopian cavalry pursued the fleeing Italians relentlessly. Eyewitness accounts describe the Ethiopians as wild with enthusiasm, attacking without regard for losses. General Arimondi and most of his officers were killed in the chaos. Dabomida's brigade, advancing to support Albertone, was cut off and unaware that the rest of the Italian army had been routed. Attempting to retreat, Dabomida marched into a narrow valley where Ras Mikael's Wollo Oromo cavalry annihilated his brigade, shouting "Ibalgume, Ibalgume," meaning reap, reap. Dabomida's remains were never recovered, though a local woman later recounted aiding a dying Italian officer. Likely Dabomida. Baratieri's retreating forces were pursued for 9 miles before Ethiopian cavalry ceased their attack. Fires lit on hilltops signaled local peasants to target Italian and Askari stragglers. The Italian army continued its retreat through the night, crossing the Balesa River and reaching Eritrea by March 4th. Meanwhile, the Ethiopians celebrated their victory, chanting, "Mow, mow down the tender grass. The corn of Italy sown in Tigray has been reaped by Menelik and given to the birds." Adwa Victory Day is a national public holiday, celebrated across all regional states and charter cities in Ethiopia. On this day, schools, banks, post offices and government offices are closed, except for health facilities, which remain operational. While some taxi services and public transport may choose not to operate, most shops remain open but typically close earlier than usual. All in all, Ethiopia's victory over Italy at the Battle of Adwa in 1896 was a landmark event in African history, symbolizing resistance against colonialism. Led by Emperor Menelik II, Ethiopian forces skillfully outmaneuvered and defeated a better-equipped European army. This triumph preserved Ethiopia's sovereignty and inspired anti-colonial movements worldwide. Thanks for watching. To see more videos like this, please kindly like, share, follow,